Hi, Joel.
Bob?
Yes, it's me, Joel, and I fear that you're starting this dialogue off in a bad mood.
Furious.
Yeah.
Livid.
Mm-hmm.
Only this thing is keeping the steam from jetting from my ears. You know, I don't like technology. I don't like the gadgets and the 3-2-1 click thing, and I don't the laptop and you probably got Twitter and you got Facebook, you got all that stuff, and as I've said this many times, I don't want to bore your listeners or viewers or whatever you call them, but I'm as an artist and a man of literature, I just find that it is oppressing my creativity, and that's why I'm getting out of the whole thing. I'm done.
And you have the moodiness of an artist, and that's why I always worry when I've inadvertently antagonized you. And I just want to apologize on behalf of Blogging Heads TV.
You advertently. No,
there was no plan here.
Yeah. This nice fella shows up with a box of gadgets. Oh, this is what I need, a whole bunch of new gadgets. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. You know, nice guy. I'm not taking it out on you, okay? It's just that, I don't, what is this? I got, look at it. Can you see this?
No.
Why is this in my life, okay? I got one over here, I mean, how many do you need? I mean, this is getting ridiculous.
Our hope, I mean, what I'm sorry about is that we were like a little late in actually getting in touch with you. We had some trouble getting the right phone numbers, and heads will roll at Blogging Heads, I can assure you. We're going to have one fewer employees tomorrow than we had today. But
so you're going to go from 1 to 0? Can you fire yourself is the question. That's what we all want to know, Bob.
Well,
what would
we
it
wouldn't
take
save
for
any
you
money
to
by
come to
doing
the
that,
realization that you suck as a manager and...
Hey, Joel.
No, but
Joel, it's like fooling around is fine, but you're hitting pretty close to home, okay? Okay? Now, Joel, it's fine to do this for entertainment, but you've crossed the line, okay? Sorry, I'm sorry. I lost my head.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Look, we admire things about you.
Well, you can talk about some of those if you want.
The big ideas. Let's talk. Actually, I have something. Can we finish the banter portion of this?
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing.
I have something to say. Go ahead.
Look, go ahead. After all, you're Joel Achenbach. You should get to say whatever you want. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to presume that your folks out there are very dimly aware that I do different things. But the last few days I've been working on swine flu.
Yeah, you're at the Washington Post. You're not only a reporter but a blogger. One of their very first bloggers, possibly. Were you the Washington Post first blogger? Were you?
We should mention that I have a blog.
It's called Achenblog. But were you the first Washington Post blogger?
The first and the worst.
I just ran into somebody last night who's going to join you, by the way, as a Washington Post blogger. That is him. That would be Ezra Klein, veteran blogging.
Oh, no. He's good.
No, I know. And he's young. He can probably work for less than you can. I think the handwriting's on the wall here.
We are going to have to find ways to undermine that kid. No, seriously, this is the worst news I've heard in a lot. Why would you tell me that? He's like a fourth my age and twice as smart. Okay. All right. Can I go on back to what I was want to talk about?
Sure.
All right, so the swine flu. As you know, hysteria last week. This week, the buzz is, it's all overhyped. It's overblown. Everyone go back to work. You can open your schools again. The virus is relatively not that virulent. It's just some fairly mild flu. It's no different from other seasonal flus.
Well, then why did all these people in Mexico die? Do we know that?
Good follow-up question. The answer is that they probably had millions and millions of cases in Mexico, and the death rate, the case fatality rate, was ordinary. It wasn't unusually high.
I speculated as much last week on Blogging Heads, where I also suggested to Mickey Kaus, my counterpart, that maybe we should get out in front of the possibly coming meme that this swine flu thing has been overblown, but at the last minute we chickened out and decided not to declare it overblown. And if we had declared it that a week ago, we would be hailed as prophets, Joel.
You're saying we did not have the courage to speculate.
I don't. Certain kinds of speculation, I fear.
Okay. Yeah. Well, had you winged it and just made up some crap like that and hoped that it was true. It would have turned out to be true in the sense that it appears, based on what Richard Besser of the CDC and others have said, that there was a lot more flu in Mexico than originally detected, and so they've gone back and it looks now like this is a relatively mild virus.
So does that mean that in Mexico...
Now, that's the key word.
Now.
So I've talked to some other people, including your neighbor up there in Princeton, Dick Preston, wrote the book The Hot Zone. And, we were just talking about, these pathogens and the selection pressure on them. I also talked to a guy named Andy Peacosh at Johns Hopkins. And I talked to Jeff Taubman, not to name drop, whatever. And it's, well, he talked to him. Now, I've interviewed a bunch of these scientists, and here's the interesting fact that people should know, is that this thing isn't over yet. Now, I realize we've written this, and people have said, oh, well, it's too soon to say, and all that sort of stuff. But what's interesting is that the virus, because it's a novel virus, it relatively recently reassorted. And because it relatively recently entered a human host, it does not appear to have infected people until March of this year, or if it did, it was such low numbers that no one saw it.
Okay.
Because it's a novel virus in a new host, this is what I'm told, the selection pressures on it are very much happening in real time as we speak, and it's going to continue to evolve.
So
now, how this works, you would know better than I do, because you know about science more than I do. But I mean, all the way down at the level of the proteins. Okay, that it's a segmented virus, as I understand it, and the new virus has 6 genes out of 8 from North America and 2 genes out of 8 from a Eurasian virus. But how it sort of interacts in human beings, how it replicates, is something that this is what I was told, it is going to sort of optimize itself for replication. What that means is that
all of life,
it's not a static agent.
By the way, Joel. I would just like to point out all of life does that. So in pointing out that the flu virus evolved to optimize itself for replication, that not totally a newsflash, but thank you.
My point is, it's more like a 16-year-old who just got a car. You know what I'm saying? Which is not bad for coming out of the blue. Look,
excellent metaphor.
It's like the point is that this thing hasn't yet settled into its comfy chair the way I have it at the age of 98. This is a new rambunctious thing, and so the point is that although it is true that everyone can now go back to work, go back to school, and so on, we just have not heard the last of this particular virus. And then more specific, more broadly than that, as you surely know, the larger issue of zoonotic diseases is one that people should be aware is an important thing. I talked to a guy yesterday, and excuse me if I'm monopolizing this. I talked to a guy yesterday who says, why should veterinary research be second class compared to human health research, given that the viruses that infect animals are, they can jump to humans and vice versa. I also emailed with a friend of mine who's big in the TB world, who was saying that for a long time the orthodoxy was that humans were clean and animals were dirty. And, of course, humans then got diseases from the dirty animals, but they're increasingly aware of the fact that things like tuberculosis can go back from humans into animals. And then we saw this with the swine flu, this interesting situation in Canada where a farm worker travels from Mexico to Canada, infects the Canadian family, and infects the herd of swine. So there's 200-something pigs on this farm get the swine flu from the farm worker.
And is that dangerous from the point of view of humans, or is it just kind of a swine tragedy?
I wouldn't call it a swine tragedy exactly, although that's an interesting concept. I think if you're swine on a farm, it's always tragedy. You know what I mean? It's like you never have a comedy. You know what I mean? You never have it. From the Shakespearean structure,
never a really festive atmosphere surrounding pigs.
It never ends like on Green Acres, where you're like the pet, in your punchline.
Hey, that was a great show.
I think it ends with with bacon and pork chops for all this. So it's tragic in that sense. But no, all the pigs got better, and you can't catch it from eating pork. There's some.
You sound like an agriculture department flack to me, but that's okay.
How do you think I support myself? You think that
that's
just
an increasingly urgent question
salary?
for those of you.
Come on, no. I get a direct check every day for the pork people. But look, the fact is, no. So it's the fact that it's jumped from humans back to animals. They don't see any sign that it is reassorted or changed or mutated again. It's the same. Same virus in both the humans and the pigs there. But though in principle, you don't want a whole bunch of the back and forth, because every time, this sort of thing happens, as I understand it, and I wish that I knew more about it, you do have the chance that it's going to sort of decide to change its hairstyle a little bit, and then you have a disease situation.
Now, is it true that the ultimate culprit is factory farms in the United States? That the precursor of this virus actually emerged, and precursor may not, the ancestor of this virus emerged, 8 or 10 years ago on a factory farm under...
Where did you hear that?
I think on NPR. No, on the BBC, and then there was this whole debate. They brought in somebody from the Humane Society. They turned it into a factory farming debate. Is this a misconception?
Let me ask you this. So, you're saying that if the pigs were allowed to just sort of roam around in a field, okay, as opposed to in a confined space, that would be safer from a pathogen standpoint? Is that your position?
I think in general, high population density...
Where wild pigs and boars could break into jump across the fence, birds coming in, bird flu, pig flu, all this stuff mixes together, okay? I'm just saying that I agree that the factory farming thing, at a deep level, does repulse me, but on the other hand, I would not jump to the conclusion that the alternative, the pastoral, farm, is exactly, sanitary down to the last little blade of grass. I mean, nature. Here's the bigger point. Nature is rambunctious and it's out to get us. No one here gets out alive. And nature, we're lucky as human beings that we are able to. I kind of like the fact that we have modern medicine and modern technology. We have, attempts to try to control what seems to me to be, about a 4 billion year attempt to kill me, which is this whole, we live at the mercy of pathogens.
We do, but
the majority, about 10 times as much genetic information in our bodies is non-human as human. I don't know if I've said that grammatically correctly, but if you count on genetic information
and stuff,
bacteria in the gut.
But most of them are doing you good. Most of them are engaged in a symbiotic relationship with you. You should be grateful for those bacteria.
Sucker. You've fallen for that line, huh?
Totally. Where it's one hand washes the other.
That's true.
We're reproducing, they're reproducing,
and that's why I don't worry too much about pathogens, even like influenza. It doesn't do itself any good if they're too hot. If they kill the host, and that's why Ebola is not something that we worry that much about. I mean, it's zoonotic. Probably came from like a bat in a cave or something like that. And when humans get it, they're highly infectious. But it's so lethal. I mean, what is it? 60-80% of the people die very quickly. It doesn't seem to be something that's, amenable to a pandemic. I mean, the really scary ones are things like HIV, which has a long, latency.
Right, but now you're getting back to the reason that high population density can be conducive to lethal viruses, because the easier it is for the virus to transmit itself, to hop to another body, the more it can afford to kill its host. And so back to the factory farming question.
Sure. Yeah, and that's actually smallpox, I think, never really, it's been around for thousands of years.
Right, but it is a function of urban civilization, right? Smallpox could not have evolved in a hunter-gatherer environment where, you're living in a village of like 40 people that is separated from the next village by, a day's walk. So it is congestion that permits highly lethal viruses to evolve. I would think both on factory farms and in urban environments.
Well, we may have talked about this before in one of our little gab fests, but it strikes me that the big development historically, looking at the broad perspective of the planet, is that relatively recently, one species, the human species, took off. And there's 6.5 billion of us. How many sheep are there? How many cows are there? There's a lot of meat on the hoof these days, right? Dogs, horses, cats. So, and we tend to crowd. This urbanization thing has also taken off. We're kind of setting the table, as it were, for a pathogenic feast at some point, aren't we?
I don't know. What's your scenario? That things will be so dense that will.
Well,
we do have modern science on our side. We do all kinds of things that would be lethal if modern science weren't here to save the day. I think, right?
And I think I'm much happier living today than living 100 years ago, when so many people lost their babies and kids died when they were 3 years old routinely. It was just but still. But I'm just saying, what are the ramifications, even more broadly than that, of the fact that we have not only a lot of like human meat sitting around, but also that we are so highly mobile and networked, and that it seems that our sort of grander agenda, whether we intend it or not, openly, is to shrink the planet and make it possible for everyone to go anywhere whenever they want to. And because you're a big shot author, you're always jetting off all over the planet,
the time.
Holding conferences and having your groupies in every port.
And plus the big speaking fees. I like to gather them in between rounds of sex. Yeah. Yeah,
let's go ahead and interject. This was very high-minded, and I knew it was only a matter of time before you took it into the gutter. How many minutes has it been? Has it been 20? Did we make it to 20 minutes before?
Who is the person who takes it? The first person to use the word sex, or the first person to use the word groupies? Which, you might as well, right? It's the same thing. You brought it up, and I, perhaps ill-advisedly,
sorry,
didn't steer you away from.
I've lost track of what we were talking about.
Okay, well, we were talking. Okay. Now, wait.
You know what? It's like a high wire act, for some of us, okay? You don't want to throw that particular grapefruit at the guy on the high wire, okay?
What, sex being the grapefruit in this metaphor, you mean?
Possibly. That's just,
You're a writer. You can use any metaphor you want. But here's the thing. You sound kind of down on technological progress, and yet you are...
No, I'm not. I was really asking if, and I'm sure you have some people out there who know this stuff. I'm asking if we are setting the table because of our population density and mobility for... like Lori Garrett has written about this.
I was going to bring her up. She's been saying, hasn't she been saying for more than a decade that any moment now? Or I'm sure I'm caricaturing her argument. But she wrote the book about the plagues and
it hasn't happened yet.
Globalization is
going to... It's been 15 years and it hasn't happened yet. Sometime over the next...
Are you calling her a rank alarmist? Joel, is that? I thought I heard those two words.
I will if you want me to, but I think that's what you want to call her that. I think her point over the long haul seems valid. Okay, that you can have emergent diseases and you can have unexpected. Because zoonotic doesn't mean that it comes out of the most remote place. Zoonotic, it can come out of the farm next door. I
don't know what zoonotic means, actually, and you're probably the only one right now on the planet who does.
You know what I put on my list of things to do today? Is to say zoonotic as much as possible. Because
did you plan to define it at any point in these utterances?
Zoonotic. It means it's a disease that comes out of the zoo, okay, the animals, okay. It's zoonotic.
Okay.
It's like zoonosis.
Fine, thank you. Okay, that'll be enough. Thank you. It was until you brought it down to my level. Thank you for that.
And actually, I did learn one thing, and this is about a day after I started using the word zoonotic constantly and zoonosis as much as I could. Is I learned that classically a zoonotic disease is one that is currently transmissible, or is it transmittable? Transmissible from an animal to a human, or from a human to an animal. Whereas something like smallpox was ancestrally zoonotic. I mean, it came out of the animal world somehow. It's kind of unclear, but it became just a human disease. That's actually one reason why smallpox was eradicable, if I said that correctly, is that because it didn't have a reservoir in an animal population, if you can cure, get rid of it in the human population, it's gone. So.
Well, it's fascinating. But here's my question about the
can we have another topic?
The paradox of Joel. We're moving to another topic, and it's this: that you, on the one hand, despite your protestations to the contrary, have this vaguely, well, we've had a couple of bursts of technophobia on your part, frankly. First was just the very, your reaction to the very idea of, like, setting up for blogging heads. And then the second was, like, what modernization has done to us and so on. And yet you are a veritable NASA groupie, isn't that right? You're on the NASA beat at the Post, and you worship Star Search and stuff?
Star Search, I think, is not NASA. I think that's a
that would be an
different program.
Ed McMahon show.
Yeah, or Dick Clark or something.
Ed McMahon. It was a precursor of American Idol, actually. But I think is Ed dead now? Did he?
Oh no, of course not. That's horrible to say.
Johnny Carson is dead, right? Are you sure Ed McMahon's... I know what happened to Ed McMahon. He lost his house. That's the recent Ed McMahon tragedy. He lost his house.
He's poor now.
That's not
just because he's poor doesn't mean he's dead.
You're absolutely valid point, Joel. Thank you. But anyway, NASA, you're a NASA groupie, and you favor massive federal spending, even in times of economic stringency such as this?
Where did you come up with that?
I can tell. Your writing exudes this sense that it's great that the Hubble telescope is taking these wonderful pictures that should cheer us up as we wait in the unemployment line.
Okay, first of all, you haven't read anything I've written about NASA, so
you're right about that.
Okay, all right.
I read the thing about the Mars rover, or was it Mars? The rover on some planet. Two rovers. There were two rovers.
Yeah, the Mars rovers. Yes.
Excellent journalism.
Okay, thank you. Actually, as it happens, although I cover NASA, I don't think I've ever been a big NASA booster. I'm interested in what they do, and I think a lot of what they do is very difficult, and therefore I would go so far as to say kind of heroic. I mean, it's heroic engineering.
This is what I'm talking about.
The Hubble Space
Telescope,
like heroic.
For example. That's what I'm talking about. You call yourself a straight news reporter? If the New York Times had a story about Hillary Clinton that began, today heroic Secretary of State Hillary Clinton disclosed that, what would you think about that kind of journalism?
I hear like a yammering in my ear. I hear it's like someone's hassling.
That would be me, Joel.
Okay, all right, let me say this. The Hubble Space Telescope, I think even you would agree, has been... it's just been marvelous. It's given us the best pictures of the universe.
Show me the money. What's the payoff, Joel?
Well, actually, I got a call just today from someone telling me about this new heart technology that came out of a NASA
and don't forget
research
about
project.
Tang, Joel. Remember Tang?
Teflon, Velcro. Okay, let's back up a second, okay? Are we going to have the "is it worth the money"
no, let's don't.
conversation?
I'm just saying,
because
I'm not
nothing's worth. Who knows what's worth the money?
I'm just raising the possibility.
Is it worth the money to know that the universe is not just expanding, but it's accelerating? And this acceleration is caused by some kind of mysterious dark energy.
Does that mean that the heat death of the universe
That's what the Hubble figured out. The Hubble detected, as you know, the Hubble detected that when you go back, 5 billion years, and you look back in the deep universe, the expansion is happening at a certain rate, and then somehow the universe puts on the afterburners, and it begins to accelerate. And this cannot be explained, by anything involving gravity. It has to do with some kind of cosmic repulsive force. And this is a little bit of a complicated story. Einstein, when he was fiddling around with general relativity, realized that under his equations, the universe ought to collapse on itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so he cheated and put in this thing he called the cosmological constant.
The fudge factor. He just stuck in a factor because it made his equations come out right, not because he had any empirical basis for it.
Yeah,
and he's been punished for that.
Except now, of course, in the popular science media, they say, "Oh, he was right all along."
They do.
No, he still fudged it. He still made it up. But
now they think the fudge factor is warranted.
Well, the point is that this sort of mysterious repulsive force that Einstein put into his equations appears to actually exist in the real universe. There's something, and they're saying, they call it dark energy. There's something that is driving this acceleration. And it's unclear how this will all play out, but like in 100 trillion years, it could be that the universe just goes and just it rips apart. There's nothing left, which is but not something that we have to worry about, since the Laurie Garrett thing has already taken care of us. Disease.
Yeah.
We will be already prone by then. From the pathogens. But anyway, the point is that the Hubble, this is one of the things that Hubble detected, with these sort of deep, surveys. I mean, they basically take the Hubble and for a week or so aim it at a point in the sky that's roughly the size of a Lincoln's eyeball on the penny.
That's funny. That's just the image that was coming into my mind as you said that. But we're both writers. Maybe that explains it. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. So they just tunnel in this one little piece of sky, and what you see out there, of course, is this thing, the Hubble Deep Field, was an amazing image because when you look way deep into space, way back in time, you see an amazing number of these galaxies, and the further back you go, the more irregular shaped they are. So you're actually, peering into, the dawn of time, the cosmic creation, a time when you didn't have big, pretty galaxies like the Milky Way and Andromeda, or the Sombrero Galaxy, or the Whirlpool Galaxy. Instead, you had these sort of, galaxies that looked like my desk. You know what I mean? What's going on here? The mess. And because it was the dawn of time, and the next telescope, the Webb, is going to look even further back, to almost to the point where the universe becomes transparent to light. I mean, there is a point you can't look any further back because it's not transparent. I think you hit a wall. I don't really totally grasp that, and I actually do struggle constantly with how can you see back to the beginning of time, whatever. I honestly, I can't. I don't want to rupture my brain by going back to the origin of time itself.
So has all the stuff you've learned from reporting on NASA had any effect on your spiritual worldview or anything, or your basic philosophy, or your anything like that?
Well, am I supposed to share that with the public?
If I were you, I would. I mean, it seems to me...
That's extra. I'm sorry. You got to pay. You have to pay for that.
That's a good... We're all looking for business models, and that's a good one
I was going to freelance that piece to Slate.
I think that's smart. You give it away for free up until the point where we get to your, religious, spiritual metamorphosis, and then you say, I'm not taking you there until we see a little PayPal, a little...
Yeah,
right.
I think
that's a good idea.
Didn't we talk about some of this big spiritual thing a couple Gab Fests ago? Because I'll answer your question in brief. Okay. Which is this. And I think we did talk about the universe is not about us. Okay. Obviously.
Well, there we differ, but I mean, speak for yourself. I would say.
The universe does not seem to have any particular preference for one kind of matter over another. So, for example...
Actually, I think you're wrong. I mean, I think certainly on Earth, it's demonstrated, evolution has demonstrated a preference for ever more complex convolutions of organic organization that seem to be correlated with ever more rich forms of sentience. So
a preference, or is it simply that...
Well, you brought in the word preference, so we're kind of anthropomorphizing the universe, but that's how we're talking.
On Earth, life does seem to be, in a very loose way, progressive, simply because it can go that direction. It's the drunk on the street. He's walking down the sidewalk. He can sometimes...
Joel, Stephen Jay Gould is dead. You can quit sucking up to him now. Nobody, that's like the drunk. I have personally dismantled the drunk on the sidewalk argument. The drunk on the sidewalk argument is dead. Read my chapter in Nonzero.
So you're saying... I did read that. I thought I was glad that you took on. But you're saying that in fact it is that the progressivity is built in.
In a certain sense, it follows naturally from the algorithm. Yes,
Weasel. Did you say algorithm?
It is a corollary of the algorithm of natural selection. Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, I actually
and it's not just about the drunk on the sidewalk. That doesn't merely encompass all of the dynamics that favor a growth in complexity.
Okay,
sorry, you hit a hot button here, buddy, and you're going to have to pay the price. I'm refusing to quit talking, Joel.
You're the expert.
I'm refusing to quit talking, Joel.
Okay. You're the expert.
I'm not going to stop talking, Joel.
Okay. All right. Well,
no matter what you say, you're not going to outtalk me.
The cosmos.
Go ahead and try, Joel.
The cosmos, however, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're saying that life itself, once it gets rolling, has this kind of built-in preference, if you want to call it that.
Well, that's a metaphorical word that
I would say the universe on the whole, although very nicely tuned for life to potentially arise, doesn't seem to have any particular preference.
We don't know of any
gas
kind of
giant
rampant
planet
spawning
versus a rocky planet versus, there's whole sections of our galaxy where they don't have the heavy elements you probably need for life, etc. So what's the point of all those stars? Well, because, the universe is all beautiful.
But wait, I got something great. I've got something great. Okay, but I get to say this later. Hurry up. Go ahead.
Time's up. To answer your question about the spiritual thing, I will say this: that what I see in the universe makes me feel like we are very fortunate here on Earth, and that we should take care of not only our planet, but we should take care of each other.
That's a nice thought, Joel.
Okay, because there ain't a whole lot of us around, I don't think. Now, sure, if you look at the Hubble Deep Field, you see all these, galaxies out there. The universe is very big. There are likely other sentient beings out there somewhere. But you get to this sort of philosophical question of, if, 12 billion light years away, there's an intelligent being, okay? And you'll never, ever be able to communicate with that intelligent being.
Yeah.
In part because of the speed of light issues, okay? What's the point, okay? I'll tell you this, though. It's hard enough communicating with the people who live down the street or in my own house. So I do believe that what space tells us and what all of cosmology has told us, and that what all of the planet hunting in the last 14 years since they found the first extrasolar planet has told us, and what our explorations of the solar system has told us, is to be nice to one another.
Wow.
That's what I think. And that's spiritual. That's more pragmatic than spiritual.
That's an interesting route to that conclusion.
So
you might say,
we ain't gonna get a do-over, okay? The Earth, as we now know, isn't really that big, okay? Its resources are finite. You put 6.5 billion people on it, you kind of notice it feels kind of crowded.
Yeah.
It's getting hotter, it's getting more crowded. No one's really necessarily taking care of it. Something is, the whole carbon issue. It's, at least that's an attempt to try to take the future of the planet into account. But that's obviously a sticky situation. You're going to tell people, oh, you can't have a refrigerator or you can't have a car, because it's going to, the carbon budget's going to get busted. I just think
Joel,
yes,
whether knowingly or not, you have set the stage for some Joel Bob intellectual synergy. Now, you said the reason
that scares me. God. Okay, go ahead. I'm going to back off here while you do that.
I would just put a finer point on your point, if that's possible. I mean, given the fineness to which you've taken the point. You said, we should look out for one another because, after all, life, so far as we know, is a rare and precious experiment. And if this this thing goes up in smoke, well, it'll be over. That would be bad. I would just point out that in terms of the implication being that we look out for one another, the logic behind that actually grows with the passage of time as we grow more interdependent, okay? So it is truer. I mean, let me put it this way.
So the more networked we get, the kinder we need to be.
30,000 years ago, if
Facebook will make us nicer.
Excellent transition. But we are more interdependent. It's more and more in our own interest, too. It gets back to the flu being this thing that can spread around the world globally. More and more our fortunes are correlated with the fortunes of people everywhere. More and more we are all in this together. 30,000 years ago, if you were a hunter-gatherer, you didn't care about diseases in a hunter-gatherer society a continent away. Now you do. Mm-hmm. So there's all these forces conspiring to make us care about one another, which raises the question of whether there's a kind of moral directionality to history, which in turn would raise the question of whether there's some kind of higher purpose. Some kind of higher purpose unfolding, Joel.
Wait.
Yeah?
Did you use the phrase, a moral directionality to history?
Not for the first time. I did, yes.
Okay, that's interesting.
Cosmic.
You should write a book about it.
I should write a book about God and bring that into it.
By the way, there is going to be a guidebook to the God book, right? Because I saw that doorstopper in your house.
You saw the bound galleys. The book itself.
Oh my God! I mean, can we use that as for ballast somehow in ships? I mean, this thing is. What is it?
We could drop them on
pages?
pirates. This is an excellent idea.
Exactly.
Drop copies of the Evolution of God on pirates as they try to scale the walls of the ships.
Yeah.
Excellent idea. Because we may have some remainders.
No, I think that book is going to be big.
It's big. And, it is big. You just said it's big.
Metaphorically big.
Yeah.
Metaphorically big. But I do think you need to have a guidebook.
A Cliff's Notes, as it were.
Okay. Yeah, just like a 20-page summary of the 2,000-page book, and then probably, frankly, you need to have then like a blog item, okay, that summarizes the guidebook to the guidebook. Okay, so you have like the blog post about the guidebook. And then I should have a
Twitter feed,
and then you need to figure out
a tweet that crystallizes the blog item.
Yeah, which says basically, God is love.
Have you read my book? Have you read my book?
Isn't that what that's what it says, right?
Did you jump to the end?
I just read the sex scenes.
Yeah, well, there's not as many of those. That's what worries me. The best-selling book I've ever written had a lot of sex, and this one doesn't. But it's kind of you to bring up that book so that I could plug it.
Did I bring it up?
It's called The Evolution of God. And,
The Evolution of God. Did I mention I have a blog? Achenblog.
You do have and The Evolution of Achenblog would be a good book.
We're going in different directions.
There's synergy, man. There's synergy.
So, no, I think... but let's get back to this. You're saying that there's a moral directionality, but how do you separate that from just simply the pragmatic need for people to get along? I mean, that doesn't strike me as something.
No, the moral directionality lies...
Are you being all woo-woo about it? I mean, is moral directionality? I mean, we're the cosmic evolution of goodness and love. I mean, is that what you're saying?
If I told you, Joel...
Because what about,
If I gave you two scenarios, Joel, one in which history has been driving us to nowhere in particular, that's scenario A, and the other is in which history has been inexorably driving us, ultimately technological evolution has been inexorably driving us to a point where the only way to survive as a species in orderly, non-chaotic, non-kind of chronically painful form is to take a greater interest in the welfare of other people around the world and to get better at putting yourself in their shoes and understanding their plight. If that scenario,
I would say to you that H.G. Wells said the same thing 100 years ago.
Well, good. Is his book? I hope his book would be out of print then. He did not. Did he say exactly that?
He talked. This idea of world government. Okay.
Well, that's different. It's related because it also follows from a non-zero sum, a growing non-zero sumness.
I can't quote you chapter and verse.
No.
But the idea that we can't exist, as a kind of, set of independent actors and have to, join together. is something that I think
saying,
Wells was writing about as early as 1901. In some of his books, like Anticipations,
the famous
The Discovery of the Future,
the famous Norman Angell book of around that time. I'm not the first to say it. I'm just asking you, if you look at two scenarios, one in which life, technological evolution does drive us inexorably to this point of some moral significance, where you choose between, chaos and destruction on the one hand, and this greater concern for an identification with the plight of the other in the other, and on the other hand, a scenario in which history leads us nowhere in particular. Which scenario would you say is more suggestive of some sort of larger purpose unfolding on the planet? Okay, purpose. I'm using the
let me ask you this.
Yeah. Well, you're dodging the question. You're dodging the question. Which scenario, Joel? I know you're afraid that your cool liberal atheist friends will think less of you, Joel, if you acknowledge that maybe there's some sort of purpose unfolding in the universe. I know you Chablis-sipping, liberal atheists.
Hang on a second.
You're actually not a liberal. You actually are covertly right-wing, and that's another thing I would like to get to. But you are afraid that the Chris Hitchenses of the world will no longer invite you to their Chablis and Brie parties if you don't toe the atheist line.
Speaking of covertly right wing, let me say this. I'm a scientist at heart. At least I wish I was. So I don't do labels ideologically.
Mm-hmm.
But what you seem to be saying is that what we see here on Earth in human civilization and its the increasing need to essentially, care for one another is somehow a proxy for a cosmic truth.
A proxy for a cosmic. I'm saying it's suggestive of a cosmic truth.
I used the wrong word. What word do I want?
How about suggestive of?
Suggestive of a cosmic truth.
It is a hallmark of I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's okay. I would say that's a stretch, but it's interesting. I might have to chew on that for a while. But
you got a lot of time. My book doesn't come out for 4 weeks.
But I think it's hard for me to separate what I would call sort of pragmatic political realities and pragmatic social and cultural needs and sort of compelling agenda items. It's hard for me to take that and then kind of dress it up into what you seem to be wanting to do, which is to make it a cosmic, truth. But I haven't read your book, so I'll be willing to see it. I mean, are you saying what happens eventually? Does it end in a big kumbaya moment?
That's the question. I do think
the universe. The whole point of the universe is kumbaya.
You might say that. I mean, I do think either we get better at appreciating the perspective of other people in circumstances very different from ours, and it being actually concerned with their welfare. If largely out of self-interest, fine. But it is still moral progress when you get better at seeing the world from the perspective of the other, of a person in very different circumstances. I think that is intrinsically, I'd say this, a kind of moral progress. However self-interested the original impetus. Okay, I think you are still a more enlightened, you are a more enlightened moral person if at the end of the day you are better at putting yourself in the shoes of somebody in very different circumstances from yours, ethnic, national, socioeconomic, whatever. You are a more enlightened person because that's closer to the objective truth than it is to just stay enveloped in your own perspective. You have actually made moral progress.
Can you back up with any kind of evidence the hypothesis that morality, empathy, caring, awareness, sensitivity are on the increase?
I'm not actually saying they are. I'm saying our choice more and more clearly is to either increase them or pay the price. That is the choice that history confronts us with. I've kind of said that before, but I'm saying...
So is this in your book? Basically it basically says sharing is good. Is that
was the title? That was the title that finally was cast aside in favor of the evolution of God. It was going to be called "Sharing is Good."
Why sharing is important?
Yeah. But
and
it was a
taking
close
a
call.
nap every day.
But enough about me.
I admire the fact that you're wrestling with the big issues, and it sounds to me like, although you're not positing the existence of a kind of omnipotent, creator, actor, agent God, okay,
right,
who is interested in the fall of every sparrow, you may be suggesting that built into the universe is a larger purpose, of which we, as individuals, are actors in this grand drama, and that every time you help a little old lady across the street, you're playing your role in something that's of a cosmic dimension, and that is true not only in our planet, but potentially in planets in other galaxies. Is that fair to say?
Actually, I do think that if you just unleashed the algorithm of natural selection, I suspect, I couldn't quite make the completely rigorous and complete argument for this, I do suspect that if you unleashed the algorithm of natural selection on another planet, and you went long enough without life getting wiped out by a meteor or something, you would wind up with an intelligent species. A cultural evolution, including technological evolution, would be set in motion that's analogous to, and you would wind up in a place like, I think there's a very good chance of that.
You've already written that book. What's the moral animal?
Right,
your whole point is that morality.
No, that's Nonzero. That's Nonzero, actually. But anyway, your confusion is understandable. No, the moral animal is like evolutionary psychology. But enough about me. I feel remember, we forgot to mention your extraterrestrials book when we were talking about NASA. People can still get that online, right? Because that's the real Joel Achenbach. That's the zany Joel Achenbach.
As opposed to the fake here.
No. The Potomac George Washington book is very good, and some might argue that you're better in a slightly more restrained mode. I'll let people make the arguments they want, but it's a little different. The extraterrestrial book remind us of the title, Joel?
Captured by Aliens.
Captured by Aliens.
And the subtitle is The Search for Life and Truth in a Very Large Universe, which you wish you'd had that as your subtitle.
How do you know I don't?
I should probably have called it The Evolution of God or something. But look, I mean, I think I will commend you for the fact that you wrestle with these really big themes, and that you, as someone who is so deeply versed in science, you don't default to the supernatural. You say, this is rooted in, the algorithms of natural selection and so on. And I think you're correct that on another planet where life has a long time to evolve, and you need a long time, because on ours it looks like life evolved for at least 3.5 billion years. Yeah. And for the first couple of billions, it was pretty slow. What I mean? It was like my hometown.
It gets faster. It's like technological evolution, in that the pace gets faster and faster and faster for understandable reasons.
An interesting question is, when did I think we can place a value subjectively on certain human qualities, such as the ability to appreciate the beauty of something, right? Hard to know if other animals have that ability to just say, hey, that's a beautiful sunset, right? Or that's a beautiful person, or that's that music is But I think that one of the interesting things is that you don't get that level of appreciation, empathy, whatever, for the first 3.5 billion years or so. So I would ask you this:
why if the purpose, as Bertrand Russell put it,
on a planet that has nothing more elaborate than a beetle, or better yet, nothing more elaborate than bacteria, would you say that those planets are somehow not with the cosmic program that you're laying out? Are they beside the point? Are they lowly?
I would say.
Aren't you kind of being a little bit, self-aggrandizing, making our
They're just in a younger stage of development. I mean, you're asking in a way what Bertrand Russell said. If the purpose of life is to produce a human level of intelligence, why did it take so long to produce so little? But the, long is a subjective thing. It's by our standards it seems long. Who knows how much longer it could go and how much grander it could get as, we get some kind of global superorganism, planetary brain or something. But, I digress.
But here's my point. My point is, under your scenario, one thing that kind of bothers me about it, and later when we're not doing this, I'll think of the correct question to ask you. It just seems like it does kind of say, there's all this lovey-dovey, kumbaya stuff that we value, and everything else is just, it's just the raw ingredients.
Everything else is just the raw ingredients.
Well, my point is, it seems like it's, how does Saturn, which probably doesn't have any life, and it's just a pretty planet with pretty rings. How does that figure into the purpose of the creation?
Well, Saturn per se.
In other words, do you have to have not only life, but you have to have intelligent life and moral life and empathetic life and all this sort of touchy-feely groovy life to be valuable in the bottom right universe?
You have to have sentience. You have to have life capable of pleasure and pain. And interestingly, now we got to change the subject. Just getting too far out there. You have to have the capacity for good feelings and bad feelings for life to have moral meaning, I think. And interestingly, it's not clear why we actually do have sentience, but we shouldn't go there. We should go. You wrote this thing about your kids and college. Are you pretty happy, excited about this college thing that's coming up for your the oldest of your lovely three daughters?
Was that a transition I just heard?
Yeah,
that was like
seamless. I don't think anyone noticed.
So fast.
Joel, if you hadn't brought it up, no one would have noticed. It was so smooth.
I'm sorry. The whiplash intellectually on that.
That was one good segue.
Yeah, that was good. Okay,
so but you wrote this piece, amusing as always, in which you didn't seem totally at peace with this college prep thing.
Well, it was horrible in a lot of ways. I mean, we just basically for a year and a half or so we obsessed over what college my oldest daughter would go to, and of course it's her decision. And kids today, the point of it is that kids today like to have a lot of options.
Yeah,
so,
too many.
Whereas you only applied probably to one college, or
I think
maybe,
three.
Tell us which ones.
TCU, the University of Texas, and something called Austin College, a small liberal arts college in Texas. Those three.
I thought you went to Princeton.
I transferred to Princeton after realizing that I probably should have applied to more than 3 colleges after spending a year at TCU.
Okay, well, we'll use you as our example, okay? So back in the day, when you were applying for college in the 50s, it was typical to apply to 3, There are countries today, I was in Australia about a year ago, and people, when they get to be 18 years old, they go to college in their hometown or their home province.
That's what I did. 3 Texas schools.
That's what they do. Okay. Nowadays, kids apply to 15 schools.
I know.
That's what they do. They apply to 15
But that's not the worst
schools.
of it. The worst of it is the manicuring of the resume beginning at age 3. I have a friend who knows people who literally said, when their daughter was 4, literally said, if we can turn her into the state fencing champ, after all, how much competition, I swear to you, they did plan it out that meticulously. They said, how much competition can there be? And yet it looks so cool and exotic, right? So if you just train them for a dozen years or so, they can be state fencing champ. She became state fencing champ. She got into the college of her choice. This is what it's like now, and it makes me sick because I've got a daughter who's a junior in high school.
She stabbed her parents.
She's now doing time in the pen.
She's in the pen.
Yeah,
she's in the clink.
Yeah, so justice did prevail in that case, but too often, Joel, these over manicured kids are actually going to college rather than a federal penitentiary, where most of them do belong. For this excessive, it makes me. I'm not kidding. It's like. I think it's
that's a separate issue, but it's a good one too. Which so my essay was about the options mania, the options generation, and the fact they apply to so many schools, and then because as parents we are in the generation of being total wimps, can't say no. We say sure, let's go explore all these schools. So we went all up and down the East Coast, multiple trips. We checked out so many schools, and every tour is the same. It's always some marvelous young person walking backwards, explaining how her school or his school is great, and then you go to always go to the fitness center, because the fitness center always has new Nautilus type machines, and always has new big flat screen TVs. You go, ooh, wow, look at that, And so,
like you were looking at that. Like you were looking at that, Joe. You weren't looking at the co-eds and the spandex, right? You're looking at the screens, right?
There's never any students in the fitness center. The students are all passed out. They're stoned somewhere.
No, actually, they don't do drugs anymore. All they do is drink. I was told this by some Princeton undergraduates.
Well, on one of my tours, okay. We were walking along.
Did you catch a whiff of something other than...
One of my... let me tell the story.
Okay.
All right. So we're walking along, and the guy's saying, and over here we have the substance-free dorm. Okay, the substance-free... If you're into that...
That was a dorm I was in at TCU.
If you're in, if that's your thing, I mean, if you're crazy kids today, some of these kids don't like the substances, So if you're into the substance-free lifestyle, we have a whole dorm for you over here, the substance-free dorm. And as soon as this tour guide says this, from another direction wafts the unmistakable smell of marijuana.
But it was from the other direction. It was from the direction of the non-substance-free dorm.
Okay, but as if to punctuate his point.
Yeah.
And then I look around, and there, right in the middle of the quad, puffing away on a doobie, are a couple of students, right in the open. So I
Tell us
guess
what college this was, Joel.
Actually, I'm not going to do that.
We deserve to know. Joel, excuse me. Are you a journalist, or are you a flack for universities? Just something to think about.
I'm thinking about how much that would pay. We have business model issues here, so
you're going the route that pays better by not telling us. That's for sure.
Anyway, so onward. But what you've raised is a separate issue. It's an issue of our magnificent children who must be perfect, groomed from an early age to get into manufactured,
college candidates,
manicured.
It's sickening.
Yeah, and I think that the admissions offices. They hate that. I mean, but they're wise to it. They know. They can tell that this kid
That's so untrue. That's so untrue.
You think that they don't? You think they can't tell?
No, I think they either can't tell or they don't care. Or I think it would be too hard. How can you separate genuine motivation? I mean, there are kids who really aspire to be a fencing champ. How can you tell?
Right.
Well,
There's no question that colleges do have certain things that they like. In particular, I mean, my kid got into a lot of schools, and because she's a great student.
Oh, did she?
Okay. Yes, she is actually. Do you have an issue with that? You want to challenge me on this? Because I'd come through that camera right now and whoop some ass. Okay.
Well, my daughter has not yet applied because she's a year behind yours, but maybe we'll have another dialogue a year from now.
Yes. So, but the fact that my kid is in a public school. I mean, they have statistics.
So is mine.
They want the public schools kids, so on. So it's
Oh, do they? That's good. I didn't know that. Do they?
Oh yeah. Is she at the high school up there?
She's at the high school up there.
Nice high school.
All
right, let's wrap it up. I actually have to go back to work.
Okay, but can I quickly just say one amazing thing? You're not on Facebook yet. If you were, I would do a friend request. I would friend you. I would aspire to be your friend. Are you on Facebook?
Once again, backing up here. Okay, Bob, you and I spend enough time together, don't you think? As it is, with our little bike rides.
We didn't even get into that. We rode bikes with the great one.
We did, the great man.
Our mutual mentor, who shall remain nameless, lest it seem like we are name dropping.
Why would I need to friend you? I mean, you could email me.
It would be a way of possibly regaining my favor. It's one of several paths to regaining my favor.
I'm in your disfavor?
I didn't state that explicitly. I'm just saying. Look, friending has a lot of benefits. But the point I want to get to is, I joined Facebook not long ago. And I said on Blogging Heads, I'm joining Facebook. And so I'm like doing the best I can to gather friends. But here's what happened, Joel. You're not going to believe this.
You have like 6.
Joel,
right? Yeah.
You don't know about the cutest dog in the world, my dog Fraser. You've never seen the parts of Blogging Heads where Fraser eats a piece of spoon-sized shredded wheat. Anyway, So like I've just joined Facebook. I'm like cruising along. Oh, in comes a friend request. It's from Fraser Wright, and there's a picture of my dog, and so I chose to become his. And it's not me. I'm not the force behind Fraser. At first, I thought it was my kids or my wife. It's not. Next logical candidate, somebody in the Blogging Heads company. It's not okay. And meanwhile, I mean, I'm not saying Fraser himself doesn't have enough brains and manual dexterity to do it himself.
Idea. Now that's a book.
If we assume that there's a human behind Fraser, it's not me, it's not my family, it's not anybody in the company. That's all I'm going to say right now. But he's got over 150 friends, and I only have 50.
Your dog has more friends than you do.
My dog has more friends than me. I'm not kidding.
Out-friended by your dog.
And I'm working. I'm like working. I'm like people like you. I'm saying, will you be my friend? I'm so desperate to have friends, and I'm only up to 50.
I'm more interested in the dog.
A lot of people are, Joel. You're not alone.
I don't know. But you know why? Because a couple of years from now, he'll still be my friend, and you, I don't know.
Well, he is man's best friend.
Not so much necessarily.
Well, you live in Washington. You know what they say about Washington. If you want a friend in Washington, Joel, get a dog. Get a dog. And you should. You don't have a dog there.
And on that note,
Joel, it's been another very pleasurable hour of swapping cosmic insights.
No, it wasn't. You don't like it. You don't like the goofy thing, right? You don't like the goofy thing. You like the serious thing.
No, I think goof is the purpose of Joel. You talk about unfolding purposes. Your unfolding purpose is to be goofy.
What if the universe itself, at the cosmic level,
it's just a goof.
To be goofy.
It's just a goof. We turn into a giant goof. I know you're doing your part. Down. Okay. Well, we count down to stop. Is that what we do?
That's what.
Okay. So go 3, 2, 1, stop, and we'll stop. But before we do that, we'll say sayonara. See you again. Oh, one question. The purpose of today's little episode, we were trying to make you technologically self-sufficient so that we wouldn't have to keep sending, a crew of assistants, and you would just be able to do this from the comfort of your own home. Did we succeed? Are you self-sufficient now?
I don't know.
I'm taking that as a no. Okay, we'll talk off camera.
All right, bye.
Okay, see you around.
Thank you, Bob. All right,
my pleasure. Bye.
Oop.